I'd like to think that so far I've been generally positive about the Super Cassette Vision. Yeah, Super Golf, Super Mahjong, and Super Baseball weren't for me, but I think I pointed out that in the context of history they definitely had their place. Well, that changes here. Punch Boy is an unmitigated disaster. It's a truly awful game. The concept behind Punch Boy is that Punch Boy's girlfriend Lady has been kidnapped. They weren't really being creative here. And Punch Boy has to punch his way to the evil fortress and then punch through the people guarding her there. This is in the style of a single-screen arcade game, and there are 3 different stages. The first 2 control the same and have the same goal, but with a different layout and one significant change. And then the 3rd stage turns it into a side view where you can jump around. The goal on the overhead maze stages is to punch out all of the monsters that appear. And this is something that is much easier said than done. When you start the stage, all of the monsters are in those little round rocks. Punch Boy can walk up to those and punch them and they'll roll off. That does absolutely nothing. Even if you roll them into another monster, it does nothing. They'll even roll through the other rocks. The rolling rocks will bounce off walls, and if you're hit by one of those, it'll kill you. So, don't even bother punching them. I don't know why they made that an option. To stop the monsters, you have to stand directly in front of them, and then punch them in the face. That will send them backwards, and if they collide with a wall, then they'll die. If they don't collide with a wall, then they'll get stunned for a few seconds, and you can punch them again. It has to be the face that you punch them in. If you punch them from behind or the sides, it does absolutely nothing. And it's not a good idea to punch them in the face, because the monsters can suddenly stop in place and breathe fire. The fire can be blocked by walls, sometimes. Sometimes it just goes through walls and will hit you on the other side anyways. But you don't know which walls the fire will pass through until it happens. The safest way to handle this that I found was to find intersections where the monster might turn into you, and then stand there and punch as they come around the corner. If things line up correctly, then they'll walk into your fist and go backwards. All of the rocks except 2 on each stage hatch, so you'll have to clear all of those monsters. There are a couple other features of these maze stages. There are tunnels on the sides that you can use to cross to the far side. And then each of the mazes has their own special feature that can be used to destroy monsters. On the first stage are punching machines that when you hit the button, it'll shoot a fist around the perimeter of the maze. That will hit any monster regardless of what direction they're facing. If you've triggered all 4 machines, then a key will appear around the center of the maze, and collecting it will reset the machines. On the second maze, there are springboards in the corners that will fly you across the whole thing. Not really that useful, and there's a good chance you'll land on something you don't want to out the other end. There are also these machines that will spring a small distance, but only one of them is active at a time. The active one has a very slight orange hue, barely different from the yellow of the inactive ones. You hit them to activate them, and a monster on the other side will go flying the whole distance down the maze. After you activate one of these devices, another one will become active, and it just rotates through them. These maze stages have another big problem to them, one that's worse than fighting the actual monsters. The controls require absolute precision to maneuver around. They don't channel you into a path that you're close to, they want you to be pixel perfect dead on that path. And if you're pushing in a diagonal direction, you could wind up slipping around a corner that you don't intend to. Because of the awkward shape of the Super Cassette Vision controllers, it's really easy to do that. Once you clear out all the monsters, you enter the center of the maze to advance to the next stage. The third stage will have monsters that fling open the windows and then throw objects at you. And while they're doing that, rats will be climbing down the vines. On this stage, the right button continues to punch, and the left button now jumps. What you have to do is punch out all the monsters that open the windows. So you'll walk around back and forth waiting for them to open a window, then jump up and hit them in the face. I recommend doing this from top to bottom, because the monsters only attack downward. This makes it pretty easy. With all the monsters defeated, you go to the top level where Lady is, and have to grab onto the balloon. Then you float away for a happy ending, which will take you into a loop where the game becomes a little bit harder. Punch Boy offers 2 difficulty levels, Amateur and Professional. On Amateur, you're given 8 lives to start with, while on Professional you have 4, and you start on what feels to be about the second loop. So Punch Boy is a pretty bad game. The maze stages are the worst, they're almost unplayable. It's basically a rundown of all the things that can go wrong with an 8-bit game. A tiny attack, requiring absurd control precision, hitboxes for enemies that don't make a lot of sense, and that sound as you're walking around will get on your nerves awfully fast. The side view stage is okay, but it also has one obvious strategy that makes it trivial to beat. Maybe if there was a time limit on the stages, but then the random movement of the enemies would be more frustrating. There's really no good solution to fix Punch Boy except rebuild it from the ground up.